Σεβασμιότατε, σεβαστοί πατέρες, φίλες και
Eminence, friends, dear fathers, dear friends of the Academy, welcome to the third series of online webinars under the title Time for Action. For the first time, we came together during the pandemic in 2020-2021. The second year was 2021-2022, so this year, 2022-2023, is the third consecutive year that we have the privilege to organize this series of webinars under the general title Time for Action. And we have today the honor to host here His Eminence, the Metropolitan of Cameroon, Gregorios, who is going to discuss the following topic: the Orthodoxy in Africa, problems, challenges, and perspectives. The importance of this topic is self-explanatory. I shouldn't say a lot of things, especially after the Russian intervention in the Patriarchate of Alexandria. So this is a very important issue, not only for the mission, which is of course inherent to the life of church, but more especially concerning the Orthodox mission in Africa, in the Patriarchate of Alexandria. His Eminence, the Metropolitan of Cameroon, Gregorios, who studied theology in Athens. He also studied drawing and painting. He did his master's at the University Gregoriana in Rome. He has been serving at the Patriarchate of Alexandria since 2001, and since 2004, he was elected Metropolitan of Cameroon. In 2009, the Orthodox Church of Cameroon was officially recognized by the state. So before giving the floor to His Eminence, kindly allow me to say that the series of online webinars have already been published. As you may well know, most of you at least, recently we had the honor and responsibility to host in Volos the second Great Conference of IOTA, the International Orthodox Theological Association. And during this great conference, which had the participation of 450 Orthodox theologians from all around the world. So, given this chance, we published some of the webinars of last year, some of the speeches. For example, the speech of Ron Williams, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, titled Sergius Bukak of Socialism and the Church. They are published in English because mainly we had an English speaking participants. We also published the series under the title The Russian Theology of Diaspora from the second year of the webinars, Times for Action, and the speech of Andrew Lau in our academy, The Fathers, the Tradition and the Theology of In-Between. So those were speeches, webinars that we have organized in the academy, but also allow me to say a few words about some other books that we have published, which are not related to the webinars, but with our more general, let's say, interest. The study of Paul Gavriluk, the president of IOTA, regarding Father Florovsky and the Russian Renaissance, as well as a very interesting book by Olya Lusenko and Kostis Trigiannakis. This is a book with photographs, very interesting photographs and short text about the churches and monuments in the jurisdiction of the metropolis of Dimitrias. The catalogue of the icons from the Byzantine Museum of Makrinitsa, And last but not least, a fairy tale for both kids and adults with very deep meanings to trace one's soul. So, this is what I had to say regarding our recent publications. Some of them are related to the series of webinars Time for Action. And I would like to make an announcement that the next online webinar will take place on the 2nd of March by Mr. George Dimakopoulos, who is professor at the University of Fordham. He is director of the Center of Orthodox Studies, and he will discuss about violence in the ecclesiastical text. He is going to speak in English, but we will have interpretation in Greek. We also have interpretation in English today, since His Eminence has been speaking in Greek, but we interpret the webinar in English, into English. So after those two remarks, without further ado, I give the floor to His Eminence after thanking him for honoring us and being the first speaker of this year's webinar. So thank you for your trust and thank you for your collaboration. Your Eminence, welcome. You have the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Kalaididis. It is also an honor for me. Thank you for inviting me here today at this series of lectures to contribute and to discuss the largely unknown work of the mission in Africa. I would also like to thank your Metropolitan for his blessings and also for giving me personally his blessing. So, the mission of the Patriarchate of Alexandria. Let's start by mentioning some historical facts, let's say. The history of the mission or of mission activity, of missionary activity, one could say that started with the presence of the prophets of the Old Testament and their mission to inform, control, and announce the will of God to the people of Israel. And it continues at the moment when the Son and Word of God came into history, that is, with the incarnation of our Lord Jesus Christ, which is surrounded by many paradox incidents, and which are the fulfillments of Jewish messianic prophecies and expectations, if you wish, such as the Annunciation of the Virgin, the Nativity of Jesus with the angels, the star, the Magi of the East, all mixed up with prophets, retellings, and expectations. The flight to Egypt, the 12-year-old Jesus preaching at the temple, the baptism of Jesus, the calling of the disciples, his teachings and his wanderings with the various miracles and treatments and resurrections of death, the passion of Christ, his crucifixion, his resurrection, and his appearance to his disciples, the ascension and the Pentecost. So it is important to focus on the fact that between the preaching Jesus and his disciples, there is a relationship of trust, of faith, which goes through various stages till its completion and perfection. So after the Pentecost, the apostles, according to their assignment, are scattered throughout the world, preaching and setting up communities of believers. So this relationship of trust, faith, between the content of the mission, that is the preaching Jesus Christ, will be what the listeners of the word will be taking to the apostolic world during the graph of their work. So a main principle behind the apostolic work is that the apostles have diligently denied the connection of their listeners' faith to themselves, and they always point to the preaching Jesus. The Apostle Paul, his first epistle to the Corinthians, says, "Now, this I say, that every one of you said, I follow Paul, and I follow Apollos, and I follow Cephas, and I follow Christ. Is Christ divided? Was Paul crucified for you? Or were you baptized in the name of Paul? Therefore, all these points at the life of Jesus Christ, as well as the true theory of the prophetic word, will be from now on the main issue and the content of their preaching, both for the apostles and their successors, as it is also documented at the Acts of the Apostles. All this narrated from the point of view of an eyewitness and as an experience of getting to know the world according to his orders. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations. However, it is the communities of believers that make preaching a true life experience during the act of remembering Jesus Christ, that is, during the Holy Eucharist. The Holy Eucharist is at the epicenter of the believer's life, and it is a recurring experience that is related not only to the past when Jesus was present here on earth, but mainly with the experience of the end of the days. Right now, I would like to discuss how we can convey this experience of the end of the days. Want to share with you something that the Metropolitan of Megara and Salamina, Bartholomew of blessed memory, has said, who explained to kids what are the ends of time. And he said the following: what we are doing right now is like getting on a bus. And what we are saying, what we read, what we sing, what we do, we travel to the kingdom of heaven. And when we get there, we don't get off because we're not yet allowed to disembark. But we can take some pictures, we can taste, or we can smell the kingdom of God, and we can come back to our daily life with all the riches of those experiences. So, the history of the apostolic work of the Patriarchate of Alexandria begins with the arrival of the Apostle Mark, first of course in Cyrenaica and to Pedapolis, and from there to Alexandria in Egypt, which took place in 2 periods of time. That is, he arrives, preaches, and due to difficulties, he goes back to Cyrenaica, and from there he returns to Alexandria, where he suffered martyrdom. We also have additional sources mentioning the return of the apostles Peter and Luke to Egypt. So the spread of Christianity took place among the Jews and the Greeks in the first place. Since among the names of the first bishops, there are no Egyptian names. However, at the end of the 2nd century, there are already Christians in Tibet and in other cities along the Nile, from where it became easier to spread Christianity to the Egyptians. From Alexandria, Christianity spread to Arabia Petrea and its capital city Bosra, as well as the so-called Arabia Palace, today Yemen, among the Himyarites. From Alexandria, it also reached the Aksumite Empire in Ethiopia, in Abyssinia, in Nubia, and at the oasis of the Libyan deserts, the Nabateans and the Blemian, Arab tribes. So the missionary work of the Alexandrian Pantaenus was really amazing. He was the founder of the Catechetical School of Alexandria, who preached till India, that is, the India as the country of the South Arabia, where, according to the historian Eusebius, Pantaenus found the Gospel of Matthew, left to the people of India by the Apostle Bartholomew. Let us note that these countries were home to numerous Jewish communities, and therefore the spread of Christianity was relatively easy. The role of the Patriarchate of Alexandria at the ecumenical councils is very well known. And we know that it was important, especially in the fight against heresies. It is also worth mentioning that the high level of philosophical knowledge, Gnosticism, and sciences in Alexandria also favored the development of syncretism and the development of numerous heresies. Unfortunately, missionary activity of the Patriarchate of Alexandria ceased rather violently with the Muslim conquest of Egypt in 643, and the first persecutions against only the Orthodox Christians, not against the population, and the fourth converts to Islam. One must open here a necessary parenthesis. In 1884, the Russian Bishop Porphyrios Uspensky was traveling around the Eastern Christian world. He stole a huge volume of archives, documents, and codices that were not copied. And as a result, there are huge gaps to the history and to the documentation of long periods all around the Eastern Patriarchates. The Sinai Monastery, Mount Athens, as well as many monasteries in Greece. So, this Spensky collection, according to some people, was gifted to the Church of Moscow and was lost during the 1917 revolution. However, according to others, it is deliberately hidden. The presence of Muhammad Ali born in Kavala as a governor of Egypt and the expulsion of the Mamluks and the English in 1811, as well as his benevolence towards the Greeks, showed a new perspective for the action of the Patriarchate of Alexandria, which was reconstituted, so to say, and a new era for missionary action begins. Nevertheless, as soon as the Greek Revolution begins, things are getting difficult again. But the Greeks still continue to play a very important role in Egypt. So, the missionary efforts of the Patriarchate of Alexandria takes on a new meaning due to the presence of the Greek diaspora in Africa. Now, let us take a look at the missionary work of the Patriarchate of Alexandria during the time of the last five patriarchs, starting from 1939 till this day. So the patriarchs of blessed memory, Christopher, 1939 to 1967. He founded the metropolis of Irinopolis in Tanzania, Central Africa in Congo, and Accra in Cameroon. Nicholas VI in 1968 to 1986. He appointed two native auxiliary bishops in Eastern Africa, and he allowed the second marriage of the married priest due to the problems that he had realized that they exist in the mission of Tanzania and Uganda and Kenya. Parthenius III, 1987-1996. He focused on the Orthodox missionary work, especially in Uganda, and he detached Uganda from the metropolis of Irinopolis, and he established the independent metropolis of Kampala and all of Uganda. And he also shaped the sermon of the metropolis of Irinopolis in Kenya. Peter VII, 1997 to 2004, he founded the bishops of Nigeria, Madagascar, Bukoba, and Zambia. Those are the three third patriarchs, having experienced the great things that the Greeks of Egypt have realized, but also having lived through the tragic periods where the Greeks were sent out of Egypt, without a lot of possibilities. After 1915 and 1960, they tried to reinvigorate First of all, the Greek communities in Africa, which were founded and supplemented by the Greek people who went to Africa for many reasons and after many catastrophes. They also wanted to reinvigorate the church communities of our African brothers, who, through their proximity with the churches of the Greek communities and working together with Greeks, have met Orthodoxy and were baptized in the Greek Orthodox church communities of the Greek. So the term proximity should be understood mainly by taking consideration three things. First of all, Greeks were never colonialists. Secondly, the Greeks, for 4 centuries, have been sold to the slave market in North Africa, and this is something that is very well known and respected in the African world. And third, that despite they appear along the colonialists, they could do only but a few things, only very limited things. So the work of those three patriarchs was very important, and it was also supported by the Greek government. And the Greek government, we know that historically couldn't do a lot of things in the foreign affairs in Africa, and they believed that the bishops of the Patriarch of Alexandria in Africa as goodwill ambassadors of the Greek state, so to say. So let us bear in mind that only but a few politicians of Greece have visited Africa with a real agenda, and they have proposed synergies. The Patriarch Peter VII of his blessed memory, despite the difficulties that he had to face during the 7 years of his reign, and by having served in Africa, knew all the problems and knew the needs of the people from first hand. This is why he set up a plan, and this plan had the following pillars. First of all, the segmentation of the vast metropolis that had spiritual jurisdiction in a lot of states, having as a goal to have at least one bishop, let's say, per African state. And secondly, since he knew the difficulties and the needs of Africa, tried to choose new priests and new bishops in order to man those new dioceses. Unfortunately, the time of his reign was very short. However, his successor and the Patriarch Theodore II, while having the same experience in the missionary work, he continued on the same line, so to say, in order to fulfill the vision of his predecessor. So nowadays, we have in Africa 30 metropolises, from which 22 do missionary work, and 12 dioceses, which all 12 do missionary work. Now, let's talk about the challenges and the difficulties. So, some circles from the Greek ecclesiastical and theological sphere, the mission was presented during the last 50 or 60 years as something pretty easy, pretty simple, as an action of openness, so to say, of the church to the nations that do not know the real God. However, we have the natural difficulties that one may have when they dwell and walk in this vast African space. Unfortunately, that romantic view is very popular among the believers, and when one wants to focus on some of the problems of the whole lot of problems that we have to face in Africa, he is considered as someone who wants to create problems. This was the method that various missions of the Catholic and the Protestant Church they followed the same approach in order to attract missionaries and resources in order to promote the work. Unfortunately, when those missions suffered and learned and then abandoned those methods, then us the Orthodox, we came along and unfortunately, we did the same mistake. So the countries and the tribes of Africa have been shaping for centuries a way of survival which does not leave room for emotions, for sensitivities, for forgiveness, and generally for Christian virtues. On the other hand, it favors vengeance and it favors vigilantism. It is very important to understand that this great difficulty comes from the fact that the people who have been preaching Jesus Christ were European missionaries that came from colonialism, and at the same time they enforced practices and laws that led to genocides. And I will mention a few. The genocide of the King Leopold II of Belgium that had 15 million uh, uh, citizens of Congo and numerous mutilations. The genocide of Herero and Nama in Namibia by the Germans. It was only at the 20th May of 2021 where the German government announced the recognition of the atrocities as a genocide and gave away 1.1 billion euros as an assistance towards the communities that suffered from the genocide. It is worth mentioning that Herreros lost 80% of their tribe, and Nama lost 50% of the tribe, of the population. The third and the second Boers War in South Africa, and the purging of the people of Madagascar from the French in 1947. Fifth, the Tutsi genocide in Rwanda in 1994, which is very well known, but it was not the only one. And it is worth mentioning to say that recently President Emmanuel Macron apologized for those atrocities. And of course, a lot of other unknown genocides and atrocities that are still genocides. As you know, the 160 years of Christian preaching of the gospel of love are very few in order to shape a Christian morality. So you understand that it is not easy to found a local church and that church to continue to operate. That means that we have to keep fighting every day and we have to face numerous challenges. Challenges of catechism in local dialects, for example. In Cameroon, for example, we have only 230 local languages and dialects, and we praise the God because in the neighboring Nigeria, there are more than 500 languages. Let's say that, let's assume that you have to work in two, three, or four of those local languages and tribes. And even in that case, the work is really huge. The work to be done is huge. First of all, we should understand the mindset and the mentality of the ancient religions, the customs, the tradition of the tribes, and which is what we call African magic. It is not possible to avoid having conflicts with the people that have been living and still live by practicing magic, since they see us as competitors and they believe that we are going to take away their money and power. We will have to be very careful with other Christian religions or dogmas because usually a large percentage leaves them to come to us. Of course, we will have also problems with people who approach the Orthodox Church to win something, one could say. All our efforts are going to be done in an environment of death because we all know that death is always and alwhere, it is everywhere in Africa. And one should understand, should know the tribes, the differences among the tribes, the discriminations and the mindsets, because some tribes had enslaved some other tribes for centuries. The only positive thing about colonialism was that they have abolished slavery. So we now have tribes which favor colonialism since they believe that it is, let's say, progress and emancipation. And they are right now emancipated in a way, so to say. And we have tribes which are against the colonialism because they have lost their rights and the powers. And now they appear like being faithful to the African culture without what could have meant that for 4 centuries ago. Moreover, one should understand that we will be incomprehensible for the people who do not understand missionary work and they have their own ideas about this work. And also, there are some people who believe that a newly established church should have the same form as a church of 2000 years and with, of course, with relevant secularism. We should also expect that one way or another, there will be people who want to deceive us, who want to steal from us and defame us. And of course, one should also add the very difficult mm, climate conditions, diseases, and the financial problems that we have to tackle in order to keep doing our work. We should not despair since a lot of people coming from the church do not care at all. They are indifferent, but especially, unfortunately, they are not only indifferent, but they also showcase their indifference around. We should not also despair since it is very difficult to find volunteers because Southern Europe is not famous for cultivating a culture of volunteerism, as well as the numerous other problems that we face every day. Of course, on top of that, we should also add the latest problem, that of the Russian intervention in the jurisdiction of the Patriarchate of Alexandria. Unfortunately, the people who took up in order to complete this mission, they have no theological training whatsoever. It is actually a political intervention orchestrated by the Wagner Group, by the mercenaries, and also by the Exarchate, which is funded by Wagner Group. And we should not forget that the establishment of the so-called African Exarchate of the Russian Church is taking place only 2 months after the Russia-Africa Summit, which takes place at Sochi at the Black Sea on the 24th of October 2019. Moreover, the people who designed the plan, that intervention at the jurisdiction of the Sea of Alexandria, deliberately forget the great Russian saints and missionaries, Nicholas Zatskin and his also his forefather Innocent Beniamino. Those with the grace of God, within the grace of the Holy Spirit, have done pioneering work to the mission, and they were the pioneers for enculturation, which means that we should address people using the language and the culture, and we should also try to uh, use their culture and look, think, what is that? What is the element of the culture allows us to prepare them for receiving the word of the gospel? What can help us um, disseminate the message of God? And all that according to the example of the apostles who decided that it is not necessary for the Gentiles to become Jews. The Gentiles do not have to take upon the customs of Jewish people. And as the Apostle Paul talked in Athens about the presence of the unknown God, and he preached using the language of Plato and Aristotle. However, let us discuss some indicative points which are very interesting. I'm talking about the Russian intervention. The decision of the Russian church to establish this anti-canonical thing called the African exarchate of the Russian Church, reminds us times of the past, but unfortunately they are not past forever. It is known that during the time period of the Soviet Union, a lot of neighboring countries to Russia were annexed to Russia, not only on a political level, but also on a church level. And the deployment of the Russian army was followed by the ecclesiastical penetration that um, destroyed the previous church. Georgia, Lithuania, Estonia, those examples are well known and we don't have to mention them with details. I don't want to bore you with details. However, one should stress that this was the vision of the Russian church for its creation to a world church of a Stalinist type, if you wish. This Stalinist view about the church and the secular vision of the Russian clergy and the Patriarch Cyril still exists until today, as one can easily understand by the official text of the Russian Church, the Constitutional Charter of the Russian Church, 1998 and 2000. So the jurisdiction of the Russian Orthodox Church covers to Orthodox people living in the Soviet Union that was written in 1988, or living on the canonical jurisdiction of the Russian Orthodox Church in 2000, until, and also to people residing abroad and voluntarily that voluntarily accept its jurisdiction. This is the Constitutional Charter of 2000. Of course, it is not only the text that help us understand the above, but also the way that the Russian Church conducts itself. And of course, this is evident with the war that is taking place in Ukraine and its attachment with the President Putin and, of course, the Russian intervention in the canonical jurisdiction of the See of Alexandria. A second point, the narrative of the Russian Church that the Patriarchate of Alexandria caused a schism at the moment when it recognized the autocephaly of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, it is not only ridiculous, one could say, but mainly dangerous in reality. This is not about the canonical crime of intervention, that is, the intervention of a church to the internal matters of another church by taking over its canonical territory, but something much worse. The Russian Church, in fact, considers that the Patriarchate of Alexandria has ceased to exist after causing a schism, and therefore Africa is considered both on ecclesiastical and canonical level a vacuum. Therefore, any church is free to set up in Africa bishops, exarchates, parishes, etc. Since, according to the Russian Church, the Patriarchate of Alexandria is non-existent anymore. It goes without saying that the same will happen with the Ecumenical Patriarchate, the Church of Greece, and the Church of Cyprus, or any other church that will recognize the autocephaly in the future, the autocephaly of Ukraine. Imagine what will happen when, let's say, tomorrow in Greece, there are 5 priests disappointed by the bishop, and 5 all calendarists, and other 5 deposed priests, and they ask the Russian Church to establish an exarchate in Athens. The benevolent Russian Church, which cares for the salvation of the souls of those people and wants to, let's say, release them from schism, will do so. Maybe the legal framework does not allow it, but this does not mean that the problem is non-existent. And unfortunately, in a lot of countries in Africa, this is what the Russian Church is doing. Since the Patriarch of Alexandria is not officially recognized by the local authorities. And when we say that it is not officially recognized, it is customarily recognized as a body which pre-exists the establishment of that state of the third country. And this, of course, is a big problem, a big challenge. However, at a certain point, I can understand the disagreements or the thoughts of some people regarding the autocephaly of the Ukraine. However, I cannot understand the fact they are they do not say anything. They are mute against this crime, against the Patriarchate of Alexandria. Every local church has their own time and their own rhythm when it comes to understanding and realizing the reality. However, this does not mean that they should stay inactive in front of such crime, the canonical and ecclesiastical. So on the 17th of January, the president of the Foreign Church Affairs of the Patriarchate of Moscow, Metropolitan Volos, talked online at a meeting of the Security Council of the United Nations Organization and mentioned the following. The Russian Orthodox Church alone, but also through collaborations with other local Orthodox churches, the Roman Catholic Church, the Protestants, and representatives of the other world religions, participates to the best of its ability to the protection of rights of the believers all around the world, especially tries to protect the rights of the Christians. This is the official, let's say, position of the Russian propaganda for the anti-canonical interventions to the Russian church. It is now evident that the church not only has the right, but also has the responsibility to support and defend another church with interventions and speeches in international fora. The Russian church, on the other hand, is, let's say, a self-proclaimed defender of Christians all around the world, which are supposedly persecuted, and the Russian church is here to protect them, reminding other places and other ways. Who gave the right to the Russian church to act in such a way? And how is the Russian church trying to do so in Africa? Does it have the right, the Russian church, or any other church? If, let's say, tomorrow, a group of priests, a group of believers disagrees with a local bishop or with the head of the local church to intervene, and how is it going to intervene? And which are the means that they're going to use? And what will happen then? If the local churches that right now, with their silence, tolerate, if not endorse, this expansionary Russian policy, believe that that will protect them from future interventions of the Russian church to their internal matters, of course, they're making a big mistake. It is certain that in the future, at least some local churches will have the same fate as the Patriarchate of Alexandria when it comes to Russian intervention. In the so-called African Exarchate, the Russian Church implements a new practice. The clergy, who are the priests who are going to that anti-canonical, non-existent church, they take a pledge. They do not just promise or declare that they will work diligently because they know that they work without a bishop. I am repeating some points from that pledge. Knowing that a priest cannot do the work without a bishop, I declare at the supreme uh, head of the Russian Orthodox Church, who has no relationship whatsoever with the schismatics. I pledge to remain faithful to the Patriarch of Moscow and to the bishop that he is going to appoint until the time of my death, according to the rules of the Orthodox Church. If I break my pledge to the canonical church and I come in communion with schismatics, may the God punish me. So I kiss the Holy Gospel and the cross of my Savior. Amen. I don't think that there is need for more comments here in order to understand this illusion. It is also evident that the plan of the Russian Church is very well organized and based on information and observations from the inside. Africa is a very complex place that bears all those products derived from colonialism, such as oppression, the brutal financial exploitation, and all this and many more create a very specific mindset to the African people, which makes them vulnerable in the enticements of the Russian Church. Is the money, the power, of course, those things are not something that a person can easily deny, and more especially a person without strong moral foundation. Much more an African person who didn't have those things for their entire lives. On the other hand, there is a series of pathologies and problems, if you wish, at the Patriarchate of Alexandria that make the Russian invasion easy, such as the legal recognition of the Patriarchate as an international law body organization, but also the metropolis and the various African states are but a few of those problems. At the same time, the quality and the morality of the people coming to be ordained is a very important factor. And of course, the training and the education of the clergy in order to have healthy ecclesial-canonical principles should be taken into consideration in the future. Of course, all the above, um, I'm not sure that they give the right to the Russian Church to continue acting in such a way. So the Patriarchate of the Alexandria, and personally its beatitude Pope and Patriarch of Alexandria Theodorus, was very benevolent and sent a lot of letters to the Patriarchate of Moscow and made relevant decisions regarding the Russian invasion. He deposed various priests and also he deposed the so-called exarchate Metropolitan Clean. And of course, he also interrupted the mention of the Patriarch of Moscow. Those decisions were sent and shared with all Orthodox churches, and the other Orthodox churches have not interrupted the communication with Patriarchate of Alexandria. Unfortunately, those decisions are not respected by the local churches that have not recognized the autocephaly of Ukraine. That is, we are in a very difficult situation where some local churches still are in communication with the Patriarchate of Alexandria. And on the other hand, they do not accept our or respect the decisions of the Patriarch. And this allows us to understand that the theology and the ecclesiology has been rather altered. And you understand that the church in this 20th century faces a lot of problems. We are in a very difficult situation. As you understand, this whole issue of the attachment to the Russian church is done for economical, not for theological issues. So, what the Russians are saying are not true or false. They are trying to, let's say, to masquerade their efforts uh, they try to give say they try to fight for the racial discrimination. Until today, we have white bishops and clergy in all Christian dogmas, as well as the old calendarists in the African Jewish. There are white people in the African Islam, in the African Buddhism, in the Mormons, and the Witness of Jehovah, and in any other dogma and heresy one might imagine. It is not only the Patriarchate of Alexandria that uses bishops and priests from the Indo-European uh, population. Let us understand that everyone who came to the Orthodox Church and asked to be ordained, everyone, all of them were volunteers, and to the interviews and during their studies, they have declared that they have found in the Orthodox Church and theology the truth and the tradition of the Church of the first centuries. And this is due to the joy of this, let's say, understanding. They want to become missionary. We did never ask volunteers, they came to us. So all those challenges uh, should be faced by the Patriarchate of Alexandria eye to eye and understand the problems that caused them. Personally, I believe that this situation will allow us to mature, so to say. On this will allow us to understand who is with us and who is against us at all levels. All of us will become richer in experiences and criticism and self-knowledge. So the political situation change and the greatest revolutions and the most successful revolutions are the revolutions that have the morality of the church and the spiritual morality. This war cannot be fought with less heaven. And ahead of those challenges, the Patriarchate of Alexandria should do what it has always tried to do since the beginning of time. They will try to do the missionary work according to the example of Jesus Christ, whatever cost that may mean, and whatever sacrifice we may need to do. Since we are in Africa, which is a place that was vandalized by the states of the so-called First World. Thank you for your patience. We would like to thank you, Your Eminence, for this very interesting presentation. I know that you have mentioned a lot of great issues. I forgot to mention in the beginning that anyone who would like to ask a question or share something, a comment, you can find on the menu on your screen an icon that says raise hand. You can also send your questions by using the Q&A feature of Zoom at the bottom of your screen, or send a message to the coordinators of this webinar. So you can ask a question or make a short comment, share your views. So we're open to discussions. We're looking forward to your remarks. I believe that we have a lot of things to discuss. And so you can have the floor. Do not hesitate. Use any of those ways, either by raising your virtual hand or by typing in your questions. We are opening the floor for discussion.
Δεν βλέπω ποιος είναι. Ο κύριος Λαντής.
So, Yorgos Vladis, you have the floor. Can you hear me? Yes, we can. Your Eminence, hello. First of all, I would like to thank you for your great speech. It is very daring, if I may say so. And you have pointed exactly to the problem. And I'd like to ask you the following. How do you explain the silence or the rather, let's say, ambiguous position of the churches in front of the violation of principles, main principles of the Orthodox ecclesiology when it comes to Africa? We are talking about an ecclesiology that tries to bribe and to coerce. And we are experiencing that since the beginning of the war. Why do Orthodox churches remain silent? Why do the Orthodox churches do not uh, speak in the face of this ecclesiological crime? And if you wish, Greek-speaking churches, even priests and bishops that have experience in missions. How do you explain that silence?
Να σας πω, κοιτάξτε, νομίζω ότι
Look,
για μερικές εκκλησίες η ιστορία επαναλαμβάνεται.
the history repeats itself
Γνωρίζετε
for
ότι
some churches.
πριν την Ρωσική Επανάσταση
As you know, before the Russian
υπήρχε
Revolution,
Παλαιστινιακή εταιρεία.
we had the Palestinian Company.
Ουσιαστικά ήταν να βοηθήσει τους προσκυνητές στους Αγίους Τόπους,
Its mission was to help pilgrims in Jerusalem, to help the Christian presence in the area.
είχε και τραγικά
However,
αναμειχθεί στον αφελινισμό του Πατριαρχείου Αντιοχίας
it tried to eliminate the Greeks from the Patriarchate of Antiochia, and they wanted to promote the Arab-speaking bishops. They were
αραβόφωνες περιοχές.
approaching bishops in Arab-speaking areas.
Ξέρετε με την Αραβοκρατία.
And you know, with the Muslim conquest, people did not have schools. It was not easy for someone to be educated. After a lot of years, the minorities managed, under the Ottoman Empire, they managed to have some respect for their rights, for the language rights or uh, religious rights. So the Russians approached the Arab-speaking priests and they told them, "You have an Arabian heritage. How is this possible?" And the people, when they were not educated, they used the Arabian language, and we have Turkish-speaking also Greeks in Turkey, or we also have Greek-speaking people of Bulgaria. So these things happen, and they built up schools for them, and at the same time they were bribing those people, and therefore then we had a so-called war, and the Greek-speaking community were the Greek-speaking community then disappeared. I think that this is what is happening also nowadays, and allow me to say that a few years ago, that Palestinian company was reinstated, was reestablished, and they have also a branch in Constantinople. So they adopt a Stalinistic way of action with spies, with bribery. Spying is very easily today. Everything can happen through Facebook, and this is what they have done in the African countries. They approached those priests through Facebook. They said that they were moved by their work, and the priests have personal Facebook pages. They have parish pages, and they tried it. They started a dialogue. They started to reinforce them without the knowledge of the bishop, and they showed their true colors. And they used this, let's say, they used this statement of racial discrimination. This statement. I have. Uh, I have been working in Africa for 20 years. How do you label me that I am Greek? Yes, I am Greek, but I work and live at the Church of Cameroon, and I have sacrificed myself for those people from my parish.
να τους υπηρετήσω. Αυτά πράγματα όμως δεν υπάρχουν. Κοιτάξτε, σήμερα γίνονται πάρα πολλές ανακατατάξεις, γι' αυτό και
Unfortunately, we have a very difficult situation right now. This is why I have mentioned Wagner Group, the mercenaries, the countries of the French-speaking countries of Africa have a union, and their union is supported by France, the former metropolis, so to say. However, let us not forget that French have been collecting money from those countries. They have favorable terms in various, let's say, contracts at this monetary union of French-speaking African states. However, people are at peace. We have no resurrections. Right now, those people coming and they say to someone in Mali, for example, let's say that there is someone who can pay the mercenaries and they can oust the president and they can send away the French ambassador and they sent away the troops that have been keeping the peace and the order, and they did this with the help of a series of Russian journalists that came down and they have approached African journalists and they have celebrated the fact that the French troops and the French ambassador were sent away. They said that this was the second day of independence. How are they going to support themselves? If France will withdraw the support of Mali or withdraw the support of the Central African democracy, then they will have a war because 10% of Muslims wants to boss around the 90% of Christians. So we have numerous genocides and slaughters and wars. Nevertheless, the economy is rather steady. So if French will withdraw the support, all 13 countries, that monetary union will try to make war against this other with all those civil wars and civil strifes, and then chaos we will have chaos in that area. They take, of course, advantage of the large percentage of corruption, and they want to change the agenda. I wanted to give you a short introduction to the geopolitical issues of the area. They do not discuss any theological matter with the exarchate. They just discuss money. For example, our bishops pays us a salary equal to the salary of a policeman, of a teacher. We will pay you more money, come to us. And they give them also a cross, because according to the Russian liturgical tradition, all the priests have a cross. But the Russian church differentiates with the shape of the cross between the various grades of the church hierarchy. But in Africa, this is not clear. So the Africans just wear a cross and they say that they are bishops because the Catholic Church allows only bishops to wear a cross. So they, let's say, enjoy a kind of fame and glory. His Eminence, the Metropolitan of Nigeria, wants to speak. Hello, Your Eminence. We are glad to have you here with us. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope that you can hear me. Yes, we can hear you very well. First of all, I would like to congratulate the Academy for that organization, and of course, to congratulate His Eminence, the Metropolitan of Cameroon, for his detailed but very meaningful speech. My intervention would be similar to Mr. Vlandis. I also wanted to ask the same question uh, with my dear fellow, the excellent theologian and thinker, Giorgos. I also wanted to say the following.
Όπως νιώσατε, φαντάζομαι, όπως ένιωσε και όπως νιώθει ο Σεβασμιότατος, όπως νιώθει και ο κύριος Βλαντής, βαθύτατα απογοητευμένος.
I do feel very disappointed, truly disappointed by the behavior, first of all, of the Orthodox speaking clergy. It is inexplicable. But I also want to express my concern regarding the behavior of the rest of Orthodox churches. In my opinion, that showcases something very dangerous. It allows us to be certain that the existing Orthodox ecclesiology will cease to exist. It confirms a new way of thinking, a new way of order, if you wish, in the Orthodox Church.
Πράγματα από εκείνα τα οποία η Εκκλησία καθιέρωσε μέσα στους αιώνες.
We are doing things completely different than we traditionally did it. It is something extremely dangerous, and I truly don't know if we should admit or not that the Russian Church doing baby steps will attract a lot of churches. I cannot understand that they are autocephaly churches, since I cannot believe that churches such as the Polish Church or the Czech Church can be the same as one of the ancient churches. Maybe this is wrong. I cannot accept that they can have the same saying and they can have the same, let's say, view that the Church of Poland will have the same, let's say, rights compared to one of the five ancient churches, the five ancient patriarchates. And I'm sure that more churches will be created that will parrot the views of the Russian Church. We are navigating through very difficult waters. And unfortunately, we should revisit the way that churches operate based on canonical tradition and based on theology. And this is what has been happening lately with the Church of Northern Macedonia. How some churches ignore canonical tradition of the Orthodox Church. And this, of course, is something very sad. I have the feeling that the Church of Africa, we know our history, we know our past, we know our tradition throughout the centuries, and we also very well know that even if we have to go down that road alone, the road of the canonical tradition and the road of the rules of the church, we will do so. We are the only canonical church, and we will continue to do so. Um, we are very sad uh, for the Russian church. They are mm, they betrayed us. They are traitors, and of course, this is my personal view and not the view of the patriarch. And for me, this is a betrayal because that serves the geopolitical, let's say, interests. Thank you very much for allowing me the time. Thank you very much, Your Eminence, for this very important intervention. In my opinion, you have talked about very sensitive issues, very sensitive aspects of that matter. I don't know if we have any other question in Q&A. So I have the chance to ask a question to His Eminence. During your introduction, you spoke about the enculturation. That is how the mission should work by using not only the local language but also the local culture, which means how can the word of Jesus, how can the word of church can be conveyed through the local culture and the local conditions of various people. I know that uh, as His Eminence the Metropolitan of Nigeria mentioned, there is this sense of betrayal. I would like to discuss with you the following. When there are phenomena such as that of the Russian intervention in the canonical jurisdiction of the Patriarchate of Alexandria, should we ask ourselves were there any disadvantages and any, let's say, spots that allowed them to do so? Of course, should we maybe we should focus more on our mistakes, not only when it comes to inculturation. I apologize. I'm not talking only about the Patriarchate of Alexandria. We're talking about the policies of the Russian Church that have ethnocentric view of the church. My question is, the Church of Russia and his parrots are the only churches that have those ethnophyletism and ethnocentric views. Maybe our criticism could be better accepted if we have done our criticism for ourselves. I think that we should take that into consideration. Thank you very much. This is not a difficult question, an awkward question. Those are things that I agree and I have faced them, if you see. And I have also spoken publicly about those issues.
Το είπα συναισθιασμένα ότι μερικοί από εμάς, από αυτούς που
Some of us,
τους επισκόπους που είναι στην σειρά από
some of the bishops who work on the missionary in the missions, they still have the mentality of the 50s or the 60s, where everything is easy, our work there will be easy, people will be baptized, and problem solved. The Africans are baptized in order to have a better quality of life. They say maybe my life will be better under the jurisdiction of this church. And this is why in the councils and
Αυτό είναι ερώτηση, ωραία, ναι.
in other meetings, I have been asking that question. Yes, of course, we're baptizing thousands of people. How many of them are married in our church? And we understand that in 100 baptisms, only 1 or 2 people are married in the church.
Ότι ο άντρας στην Αφρική πληρώνει τη γυναίκα.
Men in Africa
Επένδυση την παίρνει
pay
στον πατέρα.
the dowry of the woman to the father. The dowry is a huge sum for those people. And then they convert it. 9 cows, for example. 9 cows, even in Greek terms, this is a lot of money. And down there, this sum is really huge. Let's say that 1 cow is so many goats. I give you so many goats, 5 goats, 10 goats, and then I marry the woman. I live with her. I bear kids. And when I will be able to pay the last cent of the dowry, then the father is giving the permission to have the marriage and the religious marriage, the traditional and the civil marriage, the civil ceremony. They have 3 types of marriage ceremonies.
Θέλουμε να μιλάμε για δάφνες, για
So
τις βαπτίσεις, αλλά δεν μιλάμε όμως για αυτό
we
το
only
πρόβλημα. Τι κάνουμε για αυτό το πράγμα.
talk
Πώς
about our
το
wins, but never about our losses. How are we going to manage this huge issue? There is no common line, so to say.
Αυτό το είχα πει και στην εισήγησή μου
And I
στην
have also
Ιωτα που με
said that in my speech during the IOTA conference. Maybe
είχα κοινό τόπο μεταξύ των παροιμιών της Αφρικής και των παροιμιών
we should try and find cultural elements. I found that there are common elements in the sayings of Africa, in the sayings of the Old Testament. They have the same spirit, so to say.
Δεν μπορούν οι άνθρωποι, δηλαδή είναι σαν να κάνεις ενέσεις με διάφορα, ας πούμε, πώς τα λέμε αυτά, που βάζουμε στα φυτά για να αναπτυχθούν γρήγορα με ορμόνες. Να κάνουμε ορμονικές
It is
ενέσεις.
like giving them hormones with injections. We cannot do them such a catechism. We cannot train them, teach them to conduct themselves as having that 2,000-year-old tradition of the church. First of all, I have to give them relevant content relevant to their traditions. And step by step, I can teach them about the Solomon and the tradition of the church, because the word of Jesus can be found everywhere. This is what happened with the prophets. They have prepared the ground for Jesus to come and preach. So we should understand that we have that distance of thousands of years, and that distance cannot be covered in one day. Rome was not built in a day, after all. And this issue of inculturation, unfortunately for the majority of the clergy in Africa, this is not a reality. This is for us is like a lofty theology that cannot be implemented in reality. This is what the majority of the clergy believes about inculturation in Africa and its application. And despite the example of Saint Innocent Veniaminov and Saint Kazatkin, who used even their native raw materials in order to prepare the wine for the Eucharist, that does not apply for the majority of the clergy in Africa. We don't have a common approach. We have the old model, some people working under this old framework, or work in the best possible way according to their experiences and knowledge.
Όπως ας πούμε και το ότι τώρα ας πούμε η Ρωσική Εκκλησία
We have a lot of work to do. For example, right now the Russian Church approaches Coptic and the Ethiopic Church. because they do not accept, they disregard the Fourth Ecumenical Council. This is the issue. Since they did not came, they did not participate. So we could have done that approach. Because in my opinion, Ethiopia, which is at the death of Africa, could be the key for us to understand how people will be able to leave behind all those old traditions and they approach the gospel and approach Christianity. Because let us not forget that they have also a schism down there, and we will see what has really happened after a lot of years. I'm talking about the Church of Ethiopia, and we did not have a lot of people in order to try and approach all those various churches. We have 42 bishops active uh, in active in missionary work. It is not like in the era of Parthenius when we have only 8 people, and then step by step they tried to organize some actions. In my opinion, if I try to interpret this silence, there are churches that do not have that aspect of missionary work. They are not open. And those churches do not do that missionary work because they believe that church is a body open to everyone, but they do not try to meet those people and invite them in the church, invite them to listen to the word of God. And of course, sometimes let us accept that the priests have a low, they don't have enough, they are not enough educated. There is no sensitivity about the missionary work, and especially today, since the focus on the Christian world is the global South. Africa is an integral part of the global South. So there is a view that says that the Orthodox Church uh, it doesn't have a lot of missionary work because we have a lot of ethnocentric views. Do you agree? Not quite. Personally speaking, I believe that some bishops um, did not try to, let's say, to give the Greek dimension to our churches and to our missions. And we don't want to impose our national dances or our national customs. No, we did not do such a thing. Maybe some other people did it. I don't know. Nevertheless, the elements that will not be assimilated in Africa, they will be forgotten and set aside. Africa, during the raining season, everything can be received, and then during the drought, the things that should be discarded are discarded. Now we are going through difficult times, and I'm sure that the missions that will survive will be the missions that will not have those nationalistic approaches, as you have said. Africa will find its way. Of course, it is very difficult. You know that as it is indicated by other people such as Thanasis Papathanasiou, even For African theologians, it is very difficult to find similarities with theological terms because in their language they don't have that notions, substance. Those are not easy to be translated to the African languages. However, they try to do so. They try to make it part of their reality and make it part of their understanding. However, it takes time. I see that we don't have any other questions for the time being. I don't know if I'm wrong. His Eminence, the Metropolitan of Nigeria, wants to speak once more. You have the floor. Forgive me for this intervention. First of all, I want to thank him for what he said. He shared the reality with you. I have only one remark. I agree with him to the following. Our problem, our internal problem in the Patriarchate of Alexandria, and this is my personal view once again. So our problem is the lack of theological criteria. And one of those criteria is the understanding of the terminology of the incarnation. It is about time to go back at school, first of all the bishops, and revisit the main terms of our theology. We have to understand what incarnation is all about. Some of us have those views of ethnocentrism, which is, of course, very bad. The Metropolitan said that we will have to undergo some difficulties. In my opinion, this period will be very painful, and it is already very painful. However, we should not be afraid. On the other hand, we should try to be more careful when we choose persons, when we choose theologians, people who are called upon to manage our mission work, and of course, focusing on the end of the days, on the eschaton, and not on the present. Thank you very much for allowing me to intervene one more, and I would like to wish you a good night. A last question. Thank you, Your Eminence. A last question by dear Father Lino Brenda. Father Lino?
Yes, thank you very much. I don't know if you can listen to me. But
Yeah, absolutely.
I want only to profit of this occasion to send my love, prayers, and great friendship to Metropolitis Gregorios Sergiu. I appreciate very, very much his work and his humanity. And God bless him and the dromos too. Η Παναγία μαζί σας, Δέσποτα. And ευχαριστώ πολύ, Παντερής.
May the Virgin Mary be with you. Thank you very much, Pandelis, for all the work that you have been doing all these years.
Με αγάπης πολύς. Όλους.
We kiss you back and thank you for your kind words, Padre. In my opinion, it is about time to conclude this meeting, I would like to thank from the bottom of my heart His Eminence, the Metropolitan of Cameroon, Gregorios, for this speech, for his answers. I would also like to thank warmly for his participation, His Eminence of Nigeria, Alexandros, and all the participants, of course, to repeat that our next meeting for this series of webinars will take place on Thursday, the 2nd of March, at the same time, 7 o'clock in the afternoon. Our guest speaker will be Professor Demakopoulos from the University of Fortnum, co-founder and co-director for the Center for Orthodox Studies, who will discuss the violence in the holy texts. He will speak in English, and we will also have interpretation to Greek. I also forgot to convey the wishes of His Eminence, our Metropolitan Ignatius, who unfortunately had to go to another meeting. So he sent his warm greetings to you and, of course, to His Eminence, the Metropolitan of Cameroon. And he wishes this third year of webinars to be as successful as the two previous ones. Without further ado, and after wishing you all the best, I would like to say goodbye, and we will renew our meeting for the 2nd of March. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you very much.